and welcome back to Creative Live, your place for creative education. I am Kate Dessa, your host for today, and I am so excited to reintroduce Mark Wallace. He is one of our veteran instructors, and he is back after 7 years to teach us some new classes. And today we are kicking off Photoshop for Beginners Essential Training. So welcome to the show, Mark. So happy to have you here.
Hey, it's so great to be back. 7 years. It feels like yesterday I was in Seattle recording Understanding Light. It's so crazy. It's been that long, but it's fantastic to be back.
So Mark, tell us a little bit, everyone who has been around for the long haul at Creative Live has seen you from a long time ago. Tell us what you've been up to over the last 7 years. You've been traveling the world. You have a new bike hobby. You're out taking photos. Now you're teaching us some editing. What else have you been up to? Tell us a little bit about what's been going on.
Yeah, well, actually, the travel stuff predates all my photography stuff. So I've been traveling since as long as I've been able to drive a car. But I just decided, I'd like to see the world. And so about 7 years ago, I left the United States and I traveled for 2 years, planes, trains, automobiles, took all of anything I could with a backpack. And then I thought, this would be great if I did it on a motorcycle. So I came back, bought a motorcycle, and then rode through every continent except Antarctica. And I think I was able to visit 56 or 7, something like that, different countries. And it's just been really an amazing time and lots of personal growth. But along the way, I learned a lot about scenic photography and street photography and a lot of production because I had to do all of my own production because I still was doing videos for Adorama TV and other clients. And so I learned a bunch of stuff. So I'm excited to share some of that learning with you.
Awesome. So like I just mentioned, if you're just tuning in with us, you are tuning into the live kickoff of Mark's brand new class, Photoshop for Beginners, the Essential Training. So Mark, you are based in Phoenix, that's right?
Phoenix, Arizona, toasty, the Valley of the Sun, yep.
Awesome. And it sounds like we have some other people joining us from Phoenix. Hi, Dave, video editor from Phoenix. We have Dallas, Texas, and make sure you're sharing where you're tuning in from. We love to interact with our global community. So now let's talk a little bit about this class, Mark. Tell us, what was the reason why you wanted to start with this class? You're doing a large series of classes for us, so we're gonna get to see Mark's face quite a bit over the next few months. So we're excited about that. Why did you want to start with this class?
Well, this is, so we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I'm putting together an entire series called the Essential Training Series. And so, when we're creating things, we want to learn the entire workflow, how to do things, what the different tools are. And sort of at the heart of photography, a lot of editing takes place. And so Photoshop can be really intimidating for beginners because you look at the interface, there's all these buttons and dials and things that you don't even see. And, some of the tutorials out there that you maybe find on YouTube or the books, they assume that you know a little bit about how Adobe Photoshop works. And that's just not the case for a lot of people. And so I'm excited about this class because it assumes that you know nothing. And so we just go in looking at how the interface works, how the Adobe Creative Cloud apps all behave, what these different things are, how to find the hidden tools, all the stuff that can be really confusing to new people that are new to the Adobe applications. And because we're doing a series of workshops, of classes, a lot of the learning that we'll find in this class will apply to the other classes, Lightroom and Lightroom Classic and the Creative Cloud and all the stuff that we're going to be talking about in the months to come. And so this is a fantastic workshop for anybody that is brand new to Photoshop, or maybe you have a little bit of experience, but you need to fill in the gaps. I call it the peanut butter teaching. So, when you have a piece of bread and you spread peanut butter on it, sort of fills in all the gaps. That's what this class will do for you. You'll learn about disclosure triangles and how to rearrange the workspace and customize it for your needs. And so it's a really basic class that gets to be sort of advanced toward the end, and it's really easy and fun. And we make it fun. We do crazy things like make aliens and put Karen on beans. That's one of my favorite things in this workshop. So I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I consider myself one of those peanut butter people where I use Photoshop all the time at work doing small little things. But this class for me, especially because Photoshop is constantly updating every year and giving us all these new tools that, back in the day took 10 different tools to create one step. And now Photoshop every year comes out with things that, change your workflow entirely. And this class really, some of the things that I was doing that took 3 or 4 steps, now there's a button that does it. So I know that this class for me, and as somebody who does use Photoshop a fair amount, still really helped me learn the latest in Photoshop and really speed up my workflow in ways that I wasn't even expecting. So I think, to Mark's point, this is a great class for anyone getting started, but also for those of you who have used older versions of Photoshop. This is going to be, will bring you back up to the latest in Photoshop and make your workflow a whole lot easier if you do a lot of work in Photoshop. So Mark, tell me a little bit about some of the newest features in Photoshop 2021 that you're leveraging in this class.
Well, one of the big ones is neural filters. And, back in the day when you tried to do any kind of skin retouching or advanced enhancement of portraits, sometimes that could take 30 or 40 minutes. And now with machine learning and artificial intelligence, the Sensei stuff that's on the Adobe servers, you can do that literally in like 30 seconds. It's crazy. In fact, when we were shooting it, Matt, who is doing all the switching and recording, he had to audibly stop from saying, wow, because he couldn't believe the stuff that we were doing. So that's really cool. The other thing that's not recent within months, but it is recent to Photoshop, and that's the object selection tool. So being able to go in and take a person off a background and then do some compositing. Again, that used to take some advanced skills to be able to get all the fine hairs and stuff subtracted from a background. Now you can literally do that with a couple of button clicks. So that's included in this workshop. And then some other things that are new to Adobe Photoshop, it's that it lives in the Adobe Creative Cloud. So getting your work out for other people to see and review and learning, there's an entire learning catalog. It integrates with this online community of people that can help you grow with your skills. So we show how to do that in this class. It's really fun. The other thing that I really enjoy about this class specifically is I intentionally recorded very, very small segments. So there's, I think, 49 segments in this video, which is not common for my CreativeLive classes. But I did that because if you are an intermediate Photoshop, you've got some experience and you just want to dive to that one specific topic, you can in this class. So you can jump around if you're familiar with some of those things. So it is structured specifically for beginners and intermediate Photoshop users. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that was the next thing I was going to mention. The layout of this class kind of is a little different than a lot of our other classes, although it's still a very long class with lots of lessons. They're more bite-sized. So when, for me, it was like, oh, I want to learn X, and I can find the lesson really easily. And, it's a 2 to 10 minute lesson, and I can just learn how to fix one thing, or I can go through and watch the entire class in a way that allows me to, learn in a much more robust way. But I like the way you formatted this class because it allows people who want to learn a specific thing a really easy way to go and find that lesson, but it also, ties everything together in a really valuable way as well.
And sort of help navigate that, there is a workbook that you can download. It's included with the class. It has every single lesson included in that. So you can sort of go through those pages and see exactly where you want to jump to in the chapters in the CreativeLive class. And so those two things work together. And there's a complete downloadable folder with all of the files. So everything that I do in the class, you also do at home. And so you follow along, it's hands-on. There are even some exercises in the class that specifically compositing and doing a lot of fun with layers and stuff that you do outside of the class. So it's like, hey, take a break, go through this specific file, do all of these things, and then you can post all of that on the CreativeLive student. You've got places where students can post their work. So I hope people will do that so we can see what people do with all these files that we send out there. So there's a lot. It's about a 5-hour class, I believe,
Yeah.
in that vicinity. But if you do all of the homework, it'll take you a little bit longer, considerably longer than that. It's a lot of learning.
Yeah, so we have some questions coming in from the audience. I'm going to do a few shout outs. Thank you again for everyone who's joining us. You are watching the live kickoff of Mark Wallace's brand new class, Photoshop for Beginners, the Essential Training. This class is great for anyone learning Photoshop or anyone who wants to sharpen their skills and learn the latest in Photoshop. So thank you again for joining us, and make sure you're dropping any questions you have for Mark in the comments and telling us where you're tuning in from. We love to hear where everyone's watching from. One question from Scott. Scott on Facebook is wondering if it's worth buying Photoshop or if you go for the whole Creative Cloud. What's your thoughts on that, Mark?
That is a great question. It depends on the work that you're doing, really. And so Photoshop is a tool, Lightroom is a tool, Lightroom Classic is a tool. And just like if you were a carpenter, you decide which tools to buy based on the type of carpentry that you're doing. And so if you're doing a lot of retouching, compositing, pixel level editing, adding text to images, doing resizing, outputting to different clients, so Instagram and Facebook, and maybe printing, Photoshop is probably something that you need. You can do a lot of retouching now in Lightroom Classic and Lightroom. Some of the abilities that weren't available in Lightroom are now available as of the last year or two. So you can do spot removal and some basic skin retouching. But if you really want to do more advanced skin retouching, more advanced compositing, color correction, and specifically outputting files to a lot of different places, then Photoshop is definitely for you. The nice thing about that is Adobe has different plans. So they have, I think, the photographer's plan. Adobe doesn't sponsor this, but they have a package that you can get Photoshop and Lightroom. And so I think that's probably the best option for most photographers.
Yeah, and you know, like you said, this Adobe isn't sponsoring this, but they have, I believe it's, you know, only $10 to $15 a month for that Lightroom package, Lightroom Photoshop package, and they do monthly subscriptions, so you can test it out and, you know, cancel if it doesn't seem worth your while. But obviously, if you're interested in this class, you got to have Photoshop. So yeah, it's worth testing it out if you haven't already downloaded it.
Right, you can get a free trial. So that's what I would suggest. Get the free trial and work at it for the whole trial, the 30 days. If you try it once or twice, you're really not going to understand what the tool does. You'll get frustrated, you'll give up, and you'll say, it's not for me. So you have to do some of the work.
There you go. There you go. Well, we're going to play a little class clip out from your brand new class. It's going to talk a little bit more about Creative Cloud and all the robust things that the Adobe programs can do. Let's play that clip.
Let me introduce you to Photoshop. Now, on first glance, when we look at Photoshop for the very, very first time, it can be overwhelming. I mean, look at this. You got all these tools over here, and there's menu items above us here that pop down. We've got what looks like a bunch of rainbowy colors over there. There's menus and panels and all kinds of things. It can be really confusing when you first look at it, but there's a reason why it has so many of these things. There are two actually really good reasons. The first is that Photoshop is an application that's part of a family of applications called the Creative Cloud. And so if I click on this little icon here, these are all the different Creative Cloud applications. There's many, many of them actually. There's Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and Lightroom and Premiere, and on it goes. And so what these applications allow us to do is, if you're a team and you're building content for a TV production or a web production or a YouTube channel, whatever, those applications all work together. So Photoshop has a bunch of different menu items and features and tools that allow it to work with these other applications. We don't need any of those things right now, so we're going to set those aside, and so that will make the menu and all the interface a little less confusing when we do that. The second thing that Photoshop has going for it is, in the beginning, it was created for photography and photographers. But then other disciplines started using it. And so Adobe started adding different features to support those disciplines. And so you have photographers, and you have graphic designers and web developers. You have film and video and multimedia professionals using this. You've got people designing three-dimensional graphics and layouts in Photoshop. You've got manufacturing professionals using this. You have medical professionals using this to measure things like the size of kidneys and brain scans and all kinds of things. And then you have scientific researchers using Photoshop to do scientific research. And each of those disciplines has tools in Photoshop specifically to do their jobs. Now, we're photographers. We don't need to count how many molecules or how many different things are in a petri dish. We just need to know the tools to do color correction or skin correction, that kind of stuff. And so don't worry, I'm going to demystify all of this stuff in Photoshop. So we'll focus on the tools that we need to use as photographers, and we'll set aside all the rest. And so it isn't so complicated. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. So to begin, we need to get some class files so we can load in some of these images and start working on them. So let's do that next.
All right, excuse me. All right, so there you have it. There's a little tease of what you're going to learn in this class and what is going to come in the future. Mark touches a little bit on the Creative Cloud in that clip. And Mark, tell us a little bit. I know you have some other classes in the works. We're going to have a whole series, like we mentioned earlier. You have 2 Lightroom classes coming up next month. Tell us a little bit about how, how robust the Creative Cloud is and how the classes you are creating are going to help people really become masters at the software and photography itself.
Yeah, so the first, let's talk about the next 2 classes. It's Lightroom Classic and Lightroom. And those deal a lot with not only Lightroom, but also the Creative Cloud integration, how to sync files between Photoshop and Lightroom and Adobe Portfolio, and how all of that works. And so the Creative Cloud applications, Photoshop and Illustrator and Lightroom Classic and Swift and just a bunch of these different applications, they all work together. And so instead of trying to put that all in one gigantic 40-hour workshop, what I've done is I've taken it and put it into different pieces so that people can better chew off those bite-sized pieces. The nice thing is those all fit within an entire series I'm putting together. Let's see if I can put this little logo on screen. There it is. It's the Mark Wallace Essential Training. It's fundamentals for photographers and creatives. And so it's not just photographers. It's anybody that's a creative. It's an entire series. I think we're putting together 11 or 12 different classes, and it has to do with all the software. That's where we started, Lightroom and Lightroom Classic and Adobe Photoshop, but also the workflow of working in a studio. So Studio Lighting Essentials is coming to you. Working on location with speed lights is heading your way. And then my favorite class that I've taught, and I've taught this class for, I don't know, almost 20 years. It's Digital Photography 101. So we'll call it Digital Photography Essential Training. It is a complete start to finish guide to digital photography. And so in the past, it took 8 weeks to go through this class. So we're going to put that together. We're filming it now. It's going to take a few months. It's really exciting. It's for scenic and portrait photographers. And then we're going to complement all that with the stuff that you're already learning with Lightroom and Lightroom Classic and Photoshop, working with speed lights in the studio. So if you don't want to put together all that really expensive gear, you've got some speed lights, you want to get the same results, I have a class for that. Working on location with lighting is another class that's coming to you. I've got another class that's all about creating your own YouTube channel and becoming a content creator. So a lot of people want to know, how do you do that? So how do you get content out there on a schedule, in budget, and get people connected with it and building a community? So that's something. So all of this content that I'm going to be publishing on CreativeLive over the next year. So it's about a year of content, once a month or once every 3 weeks or so. You'll see a new Mark Wallace Essential Training workshop. All of it fits together. It's an entire curriculum that's built for creatives. I'm really excited about it. It's something that I've been working on for a few years, and finally, it's happening.
Yeah, it's what I'm so excited about is not only the curriculum, but Mark has, like we talked about at the beginning, Mark's traveled all over the world, so he has some really beautiful footage. He uses some really beautiful models. He really, you're going to get to see all sorts of stuff that, we didn't get to see the first time you were an instructor. You were just based in Phoenix, and we're up in Seattle, and now we're going to get to see a lot of your world travels along with this series, which is going to be really fun to watch.
That's true, and I think one of the things that will differentiate the content that I've produced in the past and now I've got 7 years of really hardcore scenic photography and location shooting that I didn't have before. And so that will be boiled into a lot of that digital photography class. So if you're a scenic photographer, you want to be a street photographer, you want to learn how to work with natural light, have years of experience and examples of failure and success and experience to bring to people that are watching. So it's really an exciting time.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple more questions coming in from the audience. First and foremost, everybody wants to know, what's your go-to camera? What are you using in this class or, the future classes? That's everybody's first question per usual.
Yeah, the what camera should I use is always, it's like, how do you cook an egg? It depends. There's no right answer to that. I'm currently using my Leica M10 for anything that I'm out shooting scenics or street photography, travel work. And then in the studio, I just got a new Canon R5. And so I'm loving the Canon R5. But I also have a Sony A7 III. I've got some Fujifilm cameras. I have about 20 different cameras. And so, and most of them are old cameras. So they're not all new. So it just depends on what I'm using. If I have to pick up a camera, definitely for the studio, it's the Canon R5. If I have to pick up a camera to go out and walk about, it's my M10. So those are my two main cameras.
All right. Well, that answers Shankar had a question. If he has a Nikon 850 that he was considering switching to the Canon R5, and it sounds like you're a big fan of the Canon R5.
I am. There is a learning curve. So I was not a mirrorless camera person. So getting used to the electronic viewfinder, the crazy autofocus. It is so good you forget to focus because it just happens. It's really amazing. So some of that stuff is sort of a little bit of a shift. But yeah, and there are mirrorless cameras from Canon and Nikon and Fujifilm and a lot of different companies. And so I don't want to say Canon is the best. It's just my preference because I owned a bunch of lenses. And so I didn't want to have to spend $20,000 replacing lenses that I've built up over many years.
That makes sense. All right. Well, before, we're getting to the end of our live stream. It's real quick before we kick off the class. And I'll just remind everyone, this is the live kickoff of Mark Wallace's brand new class, Photoshop for Beginners, the Essential Training. If you are watching on social media, make sure you tap that link in the description, and I will drop a link in the comments as well to head over to watch the class. It will start at 9:30 sharp. If you are watching on the class page, make sure you refresh that page at 9:30, and you will start watching the class. Like Mark said, it's about 5 hours long, full of short, really bite-sized, really great, actionable lessons, and you can watch that for free today for 24 hours. So before we close up, we have another question coming in from Ava on YouTube. Mark, if someone's just getting started and wants to take your class and they're gonna go get a camera, what's your go-to for beginner camera?
My go-to for beginner camera, I would say the new Canon R5. There's some kits out there the R6 that are pretty, they're pretty amazing. In fact, the thing is, if you have a budget, most cameras from any brand nowadays are going to be fantastic. You really can't go wrong with it. And so, yeah, the Canon R6 is fantastic. The new Nikon cameras are great. The little Sony point and shoots are better than the professional cameras I had 20 years ago. So just go play with them, check them out. And if you find one you like, get it and you use it until it can't do what you want it to do, and then decide to upgrade.
Makes sense. Like our founder says, the best camera is the one that you have with you. It doesn't matter what the gear is, as long as you're getting out and shooting. And this class will help you make beautiful photos regardless of the camera you shoot on.
Absolutely. Don't overthink your camera.
Yeah.
Get a camera that you like, and then just have fun with it.
All right, so to close us off today, I have a few rapid fire Photoshop questions for you. I want to know some of your go-to tools for these instances, okay?
Okay.
Right, so
no pressure.
What is the tool you go for removing a photo bar from your shot?
Oh, it's got to be the healing brush. So yeah, healing brush works for 90% of everything.
Best way to fix a dark scene?
If you got a RAW file, you can go into the Adobe Camera Raw filter and just adjust the exposure there, or just open it in Adobe Camera Raw. Just use the basic panel for adjustments. In fact, in this class, I show you how to do that exact thing.
All right.
It's crazy.
Best way to fix red eye on a portrait?
The red eye tool.
All right, that was
one click.
Best way to fix a flyaway hair?
The healing brush. Yeah, healing brush will do that. All of these things are in this class. So fun.
Best way to fix a sky that you know that it's too dark or too light. What are you going for to fix sky scenes right now?
You can use an adjustment brush in the Adobe Camera Raw panel or the Adobe Camera Raw filter. That's also in this class. Or you can use a new neural filter to replace the sky altogether. It's automatic using artificial intelligence. It's crazy.
And all right, last one, your most used tool?
Healing brush, I think, or the Adobe Camera Raw filter. Those two things for sure.
And you'll learn all about those two things in this class. All right, Mark, well, this went super fast because this is such an easy chat and we're both so excited about Photoshop that we could talk about Photoshop for days. Tell us where everyone can follow along, all your social handles. You'll be sharing all sorts of stuff as we continue to create this series of classes. Like Mark said, he has a year's worth of classes in the works. We have a new class coming out from Mark every month going forward from now. So make sure you're following along on CreativeLive. And Mark, tell us where everyone should follow you.
You can just go to markwallace.com. All my links are there. Everything is there. Instagram is the place that I interact with people most often. Mark Wallace. You can find a link to that on markwallace.com. And that's the place to go to see everything.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this live kickoff of Mark's brand new class, Photoshop for Beginners, the essential training. And if you are watching on social media, I'll be dropping a link to the class. Make sure you click on that link and head over to the class page. If you are watching on the class page, make sure you refresh that page, and his brand new class will be starting here in just a couple minutes. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Pursuing creativity is arguably the most practical thing that you can do.
We humans are adaptation champions. That's what makes us human, our ability to imagine.
The hard part is to look inside and say, what are my invisible beliefs that I have about money? I wanted to figure out how it actually worked.
And you are really here because you became passionate about an idea.
What does it take to capture great photographs of birds? You have to be grounded in your cameras. You need to understand the technology.
Just like any band shoot, we're looking to capture great shots of the band themselves playing on stage. So the drummer shot, lead singer, guitars.
How do you even prepare to shoot with your phone? And then we're actually going to go into the edit.
Once you hit rock bottom, there's no place to go but up. You learn what's real. You learn what's needed.
In astrophotography, there is a great deal more planning involved because you are literally shooting in the dark.
We can't change others, but we can change our perspective.
Wow, that's a good way to start the day.
I had tears in my eyes.
If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline, it's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into Creative Live TV today.